Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires and about Realms of Chaos. Though hopefully not Realms of Chaos with the Shadows of Change DLC. In fact, I think going forward, Creative Assembly should just flat out ignore the Realms of Chaos. If they want to make a more limited campaign, one of the things they could do going forward is give us the option of like just turning off portions of the map. So like if you want to turn off the west because you're playing in the east and you won't interact with that, you could do so. That would improve like the end turns, for instance, which is actually a major issue. But we do have some crucial pieces of information from both Creative Assembly directly as well as from leaks. So first off, the Shadows of Change, Jan Bo, the Jade Dragon, the Master of the Meteor Wind. Now this is a short story that Creative Assembly has written with the Black Library author, David Grimmer. Now, this goes over a scenario where Jan Bo goes to meet Miao Ying. She's not actually there. He actually ends up meeting the Changeling who has impersonated Miao Ying while she is fighting beyond the Great Bastion. So what ends up happening in this short story, he is trying to defend Nan Li, which is going to be attacked by Tzeentch. And as a result of the Changelings' methods or Changelings' plans, the city isn't prepared. So Jan Bo's army is the one that actually ends up fighting the demons of Tzeentch. And Jan Bo figures out that the Changeling is impersonating Miao Ying. And this story is really worth reading. You can access it for free with Total War Access. If you have problems doing so, what you can do is what I personally ended up doing with regards to this, which was to and what other people recommended, to log out of your account, your Creative Assembly account there, and log back in. That should give you access to this story. And this is interesting. And a couple of interesting details from this story is we probably get an idea of the kind of units that we're going to get as part of this DLC for Grand Cafe. So we have the Onyx Crowmen, which are mentioned again and again. We do have a drum type unit that is also mentioned, could also be part of this. We don't really know. There's also mention of the Monkey King, of Li Diao. So we do have mentions for future DLCs. Though whether or not Creative Assembly would make a DLC focused on the Monkey King, that's a different discussion, because apparently Games Workshop doesn't really care about the Monkey King because they can't copyright it, and this is the direction Games Workshop has taken. So Li Diao and the Monkey King, that's a completely different discussion, but for now you have Yuan Bo, which is obviously this conflict related to the Changeling is going to potentially play some role in the DLC, though based on leaked information we have received, courtesy of like some IMDb posting about the voice actor, we have a fair amount of certainty that the next Chaos character, the Tzeentch character that's going to be part of Shadows of Change, is going to be a called Hellbrass. In fact, he is kind of referenced in that story about who we were going to deal with, or in an article about who we are going to deal with going forward. So Hellbrass, who is he? Well, he's basically the guy that conquered Kislev in the end times. He's the guy that killed Catherine and all of her men, and every single one of them. Poor Catherine, she was weak. She was not necessarily the most powerful being in the lore either. In fact, she's a really bad legendary lore right now in Warhammer 3. But this begs the question. So we have a character that is going to be focused on Kislev, and we know Kislev is also going to get its own legendary lord. So you get one Kislev legendary lord, you get one Tzeentch legendary lord, which looks like it's going to be Hellbrass, and it's also quite likely that Yuan Bo is going to be the legendary lord for Grand Cafe. Now, this is all very interesting. So you can imagine Hellbrass is probably going to be focused on Kislev. In fact, he might start in the Northern Castways and Immortal Empires. There is some space for him. Not necessarily a whole lot of space, to be clear. It's kind of crowded there. Boris, Ursus, Archeon, Malice. But there are some provinces where you could fit him in. As for Bo, he's probably going to start in the middle of Grand Cafe, which is going to change the dynamic of the war in Cafe. Like, on higher difficulties, on Legendary very hard at the very least, Cafe generally comes out on top, and then you get the massive armies of both Miao Ying and Xiao Ming coming towards you. So Hellbrass, he is interesting. He was slain by Felix in the end times, with the help of the dwarves, of course. He also has an interesting power to regenerate around him, effectively. So he might cause a regeneration effect for all units, both his own units and hostile units. So we'll see how Creative Assembly decides to balance out. They might just only add a regeneration for friendly units. Though keep in mind about regeneration, Siege also has a bunch of flamethrower units, which will be quite effective against units that get a regeneration effect. So actually giving units around this guy regeneration might end up being very detrimental to the units that he's facing. And he is quite effective apparently against the undead as well. If I'm not mistaken, he actually ended up fighting Vlad von Karstein, though Vlad, of course, recovered courtesy of his ring. He also faced Ulrika. So look, you get Ulrika being added as a free legendary hero in the Cast Dwarf DLC, and then you have that IMDb page. Now it seems quite likely that he's going to be the next legendary lord for Tzeentch. So we know who we are going to get for Tzeentch. It's going to likely be Hellbrass. For Grand Cafe, it's going to be Yuan Bo over here, who people have likened to some kind of Cao Cao character. He's certainly a lot more ruthless and powerful than we kind of expect. Like, if you're reading articles before this particular story, you might have think that he's just an administrator. No, he's actually one of the most powerful in Grand Cafe, because Miao Ying is on one side of Harmony, Xiao Ming is on another side of Harmony, and he's kind of like the middle ground. Now, what's interesting about that is, by introducing him, they might also introduce an ability for Grand Cafe to more easily balance Harmony in the campaign. Because one of the problems right now for Grand Cafe is, like, obviously having Harmony is great, but it ends up just being really, really frustrating to deal with. Not hard, just annoying to deal with, because it just adds that extra layer of decisions just to keep a meter filled. And if you go even one in one direction or another by even 1 point, you're losing Harmony. So that is frustrating. So I hope that they're going to change or adapt the Harmony system with Yan Bao, because just pure, that's speculation, just purely based on the fact that he seems to be like in this middle ground where he's the most respected in an empire. Like, Miao Ying has the favor of her father, Xiao Ming has the favor of his mother, Yuan Bo has the favor of both his parents, so he might be the middle ground, the balanced middle ground, the actual Harmony. He might represent that. We'll see how all of this develops. And then, on top of all of this, we did get this post a bit ago about what they're going to do with patch 4.0, more or less. So they're talking about what they're going to be adding. Now, when is patch 4.0 coming out? Probably late August, because that would be the 1 year anniversary since Immortal Empire's beta came out. So one of the things that they're doing is that they're going to add Immortal Empire's achievements in the future going forward. People have asked for that. I personally don't really care. On top of, but far more importantly here, they're adding tutorials for Immortal Empires. Now, what this means is that when you start campaign, you are going to get missions. Now, this is far more important than just giving players an aim to go for. The reason this is so important is that I imagine and I hope that these missions will include rewards. It doesn't have to be a ridiculous amount, but let's say 500 gold, maybe a patriarch, something along those lines. Like something you have in Realms of Chaos. Like let's take Katrin as an example. Katrin is the most powerful Kislev legendary lord in Realms of Chaos, but she's the weakest in Immortal Empires. But one of the major reasons that's the case is because she has a bunch of missions in Realms of Chaos that she lacks in Immortal Empires early on, so her early game ends up being especially weak. Now, granted, Kislev needs to change the supporter system and all that. Easier confederation among those two, Kastalta and Katrin, in order to work, but the lack of those missions do hurt legendary lords like Catherine or Castalton and quite a few others. Because having a strong early game is so very important. And it's an easy way for Creative Assembly to give power to legendary lords that do desperately need it in their campaigns and will help them be more competitive. Of course, other legendary lords that are already more powerful and getting those missions will be even more powerful, but it can help even the playing field a bit with respect to this. Then we talk about battle difficulty settings. So they've talked about feedback on how the battle AI can be seen cheating on higher difficulties, that they get a lot of bonuses. And what they're going to be doing is that, like we see here, like we know that some players want a harder challenge for the AI without them simply receiving bonuses to specific stats that make them harder to counter. Yeah, screw that, to be honest. Like, I play on the highest difficulty because playing on Legendary and very hard makes them far more aggressive on the campaign map and makes them achieve a lot more. That's the main reason. I don't give a damn about the battle benefits. They're basically meaningless with the exception that it forces me to go down a particular playstyle. So what they're doing is they're adding an additional slider to battle difficulty to control these bonuses that the AI gets in terms of stats, separating them from chosen difficulty. This will be available in both campaign and custom battles, and this will give us a much finer level of control. Now, I do hope that we can turn off some of the things. Like, I'll tell you what I'd personally want. I'd want a better R resolve, but I'd also want AI to be just as aggressive as it is before. Like, I don't want to fight a bunch of the fucking pointless, crappy battles for Elements, because Elements get the defensive bonus, even though the battle is an open field battle. I understand some people are like, oh, it should be difficult. I'm like, no. Difficulty for difficulty's sake is crap. Difficulty should create a better experience, an experience that pushes you to be a better player. There is nothing that's good about forcing a player to fight a battle they know they will win and waste minutes of their life just doing though. It is awful. I wish to emphasize this. It is an awful experience to go for, and it's been one of the bigger issues in Total War, because in Total War for the entire series, we've had this issue. Actually, Shogun 2 did much better in this respect, but one of the major issues I've had with Total War for a long time is the vast majority of the battles that I end up having to fight in the campaign are not the interesting battles. They're not the exciting ones. They're not the ones where I actually have to strategize and use tactics. They're the crap battles, the grind battles. If that's fun for you, fair enough. I think I can speak for a lot of people and say that is not a fun fucking experience. Now, I'm not saying I don't want more battles. I would like more battles, but battles that actually mean something, not just, oh, I'm fighting 3 units in a fucking garrison where my general could kill them with ease. That is not a fun experience. On top of that, so they're now talking about landmarks, and they're adding new landmarks with regards to this, and we can see some of the icons, what they're doing with that. And that's something that Creative Assembly is saying they're doing right now. So that is essentially it. We know 2 of the Legendary Lords. We know what they're going to be doing, some of the goals of patch 4.0. We also know we're going to get 1 Legendary Hero, 3 Legendary Lords with the Shadows of Change DLC. That's probably going to be coming out by the end of next month. They did say summer, and we are getting closer and closer to the end of summer, so we will see how that goes. Costine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.